Welcome to the What Now podcast, where we document our journey through chiropractic. Our goal is to give you, the new chiropractor, our firsthand experience in running a principled, cash-based practice right out of school. Join us as we bring you real perspective, lessons learned, and the leading names in the profession as we build the practices of our dreams. Yo, everybody. What is up? Welcome back to another episode of the What Now podcast. Spencer and Zach are back in action. We have an amazing guest for you today. Zach, tell everybody who we have for them now.
Yeah, we are super excited to be bringing Dr. Paul Reed coming in from the Pacific Northwest. Dr. Paul, quick intro on Dr. Paul. He's been married for the last 30 plus years to his high school sweetheart, man. Two amazing kids. One is 23, one is 21. His oldest is a 6-quarter at Life West, getting the good chiropractic philosophy schooling in there. He's been in the profession for 26 years. He owned the Bridge Chiropractic, which he had at 1.5. He had 4 when he sold. His areas of expertise include mindset, discipline, habits, leadership, system and processes, as well as scaling. And he is blessed beyond belief to be here today and serve others towards their next best. So, Dr. Paul, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the What Now podcast.
Fellas, no, thanks for having me. Super stoked and excited to serve not only you guys, but your community that's listening. So yeah, it's great that you guys are doing this.
Yeah, it's super, Spencer and I were talking right before we click record, but we've been following you now for basically the start of the year, and your content is super inspiring, especially as one believer, also a male. I think you speak, words of wisdom and encouragement for free all throughout your social media content. And that's been something I look forward to when I do get on my doom scroll, is like, oh, Dr. Paul, go through his content and then it's time to go. So first off, where does all that encouragement and that excitement, where does that come from on a daily basis?
Man, honestly, it comes from just seeing selfishly, right? Like I want, just like hosting ChiroFest, it's a selfish act in the sense that I want, my kids' to understand and know chiropractic the way I know chiropractic. And it's the same thing with my, now I'm leading men and chiros, but just, I just see us becoming softer and weaker, and we're not leading, and we're called to be the head, not the tail. We're supposed to lead not only ourselves, but our families and our communities and our businesses. And until men really step into that gap and start to understand that like their physical disciplines, their mental disciplines are building their entire life around them, they're going to be average or below average at best. And so it's just really a passion to lead others. I really want, men to step into the gap and start taking responsibility for who they are and all the things that they're creating in the world.
That's great. And going down that rabbit hole of daily habits, you're posting all the time. So what, you owned 5 practices at one point. I'm sure there were other businesses, obviously Chiro Fest. You had 2 kids, a wife. What were the daily habits? Like what are your non-negotiables that Dr. Paul Reed, if he's going to be as successful as he needs to be, what are those daily habits like for you?
Yeah, honestly, truthfully, I think, and when you hear the power hour, but I don't care when it is, but I'm a morning routine person, and I have been since day one. Even if I look back to my early childhood, like I was, wrestled, and I would get up before school and run for my fitness and to lose weight before I went to school, as a middle schooler, right? And so it's been something that I've been gifted with, but I really think that success begins with us in the mind. Like get up early, get your quiet time in, do some reading, do some journaling, get your mind right? Like everything in our world happens twice, first in our mind and then in reality. And so if we're sharpening our mind each and every day, preparing ourselves for a day, one thing I think chiropractors are lacking is they don't see their day before they show up the office. Like they just show up like, oh, now it's go time. Instead of like literally seeing the amount of people you want to serve, the amount of new patients you want to come in, like your flow, your team communicating the way it, like just really, it only takes a few minutes like to see that day. Like you can even do it in the shower as you're prepping for your day, really seeing that day unfold how you want it to. But again, preparation starts with the mind. So I'm my non-negotiables, right? My quiet time, my prayer, my reading, and fitness. Like those are like and time with my bride. Like those are my non-negotiables. Will not skip them. And the reason being, like, we have to have those things. Sorry, guys, I'm just kind of rolling.
Let it rip.
We have to have those things in our lives for us to show up our best. If you're skipping your non-negotiables that feed you, like that make you stronger, deepen your faith, more committed, more just sharpened, right? Then you're not showing up your best for your relationship. You're not showing up your best for your practice members. You're not showing up your best for your kids. for your business. And so it's those non-negotiables literally need to be non-negotiables. And too many people skip them, think that, oh, it's just a thing. But it truly is what accelerates you into greatness.
That's great. That's great.
So, a lot of times whenever we bring people on and they're super passionate, all right, there's like a deeper underlying why. There's a deeper underlying message or something like that. Tell everybody a little bit about your backstory, like in your origin story. So, how did you get into chiropractic? How did you get into opening the bridge? How did you get into ChiroFest? All of those things. And what are some of the lessons that you learned?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So that's a lot.
Yeah, right.
Spencer. So I had my first adjustment when I was in 8th grade. And again, my dad had been seeing this chiro in young, right, immature. I hurt myself wrestling, took me to see him. And I didn't learn this until not even actually in chiropractic school. It was after chiropractic school when I started hanging around with right-minded people. But looking back, like that adjustment connected man the physical, man the spiritual. Like I literally got off the table and knew, and my wife can profess this because we met 6 months later, like I'm going to be a chiropractor when I grow up. That experience like literally course corrected my life. Now, did I stop pursuing my sports and the things that I want to do? Absolutely not. But I knew deep down that and a lot of us get called in this profession, but I knew that this was where I was divinely called to serve. And that's really where the journey started, man. So when I was 13, I instantly knew at that time, this is what I'm going to do when I get old or older. Old relative, right? As I'm through life. Anyhow, so fast forward, went to played football at Washington State, so got through. I was in my last season, my fifth season. We'd finished at a bowl game, and I had forfeited I was ready to start chiropractic school. I forfeited my scholarship my last semester to start chiropractic school. So we went and played in the Alamo Bowl, close to where you guys are at now. Mm-hmm. Played Baylor, came home, whatever day of the week it was. I think we played on a Tuesday, got home like Wednesday or maybe even Tuesday night. We had already packed up, drove home from Eastern Washington to Western Washington. And I literally started chiropractic school like that next Monday. Wow. And so I didn't give myself a gap. I was like, nope, this is what I'm doing. And honestly, I haven't looked back since. Like started school, went straight through school, got out, graduated in December, opened my practice in August, and just really have charged forward since that day. Wow. But it all started with that first adjustment. That's why I think it's so important that we're, as chiropractors, that we're on and connected to our practice members each time they come in. If you're not present and on, you never know, right? BJ said, you never know how far reaching something you say, think, or will do will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. And literally, like that adjustment course corrected me, and I've been blessed ever since. So
yeah, I had a super similar experience. Go ahead.
Same. And it's, I can get lost in thought, especially for not just myself, not selfishly, but also thinking of you, right? Like you were in practice for 26 years. You probably saw
thousands,
close to probably 1 million visits. If I had to guess.
Yeah. I saw 1,000 a week for a long time in the middle of
my, And so to think that one adjustment then affected thousands per week. And it was most likely because that same chiropractor was also very diligent and very focused and in tune with adjusting you. And for whatever reason, that's when God spoke over you and it was like, it's time to go.
Yeah. Yep. No, absolutely. Spencer, you had something?
Dude, I have all kind of things, man. We can talk about these kind of things all day. But I mean, I think like with people like you, especially people who are on fire, and this is somebody who I think Zach and I, historically, I would have said aspire to be, but really we are now, right? But we're just continuing to develop in this personality. But you're just like on fire, right? And like that's deeper than chiropractic, right? Chiropractic might be like the center post around it, and but it's so much deeper than that, right? It might be the overarching theme, and this is what I do, and this is how you get your message out, right? But what is the message of Dr. Paul Reed that's deeper than chiropractic?
Man, I think it's it's the God within. It's allowing, working through him, being an extension of him, like really allowing, right. We're called to be Christ-like. We're supposed to imitate as close as we can, which we'll never do. Right. We're screw ups, we're sinners. But really doing my best. He touched my heart when I was a young dude in high school. And just really, paying it forward, honestly, like being the example to lead others and let your actions speak so loudly that people can't hear what you're saying, like really each and every day. And now I'm trying to use both my actions and my mouth to inspire more. But really each and every day getting up and having gratitude, being the best version of yourself. Cause you never know, like there's so many people watching, so many people listening. And it starts at your home, like being that good example as you guys are, young, both getting married soon and going to have kids eventually, like being that man that your kids can look up to, aspire to, like leading them by who you are, is just impactful. And so it's no different with, now that I'm trying to have a bigger reach on social. It's just like, again, back to like, we're called to lead, and many men are getting soft and weak and not leading. And that's bleeding over into their life, which is affecting their relationship and the health of their relationship, which is affecting their finances and just the whole gamut of things, man. And so just really trying to inspire men to step into the gap.
Yeah, how do you encourage men to step into that gap? Especially for those people who maybe don't have like a really large backstory or think that they don't have a backstory, right? Because that's the thing, we all have a story. So
Yeah.
how do you encourage people to find that within themselves?
Man, I think it starts with like a lot of people just don't have clarity on where they want to go. And really you have to get clarity on where you want to go. And if you don't have that, doing some hardcore discovery, like who do you want to be? What impact do you want to have? My first coach helped me do that before, and it's amazing when you put thought into action. Like Heidi and I had set our vision for quote unquote our life, like before opening practice or right as we open our practice, like here's my goal. Here's what I want to drive the practice. Here's the revenues we want to make. Had no idea like we'd be this blessed, but literally like I'd set a goal when I was 27, when I opened my practice, like, hey, by 50, I want to have the option to not practice if I don't want to. I want to be in a position where it's out of get to instead of have to. And today I see so many doctors that are still in the have to position because they haven't been good stewards with what they were given. And so, but fast forward, like that literally happened. Like I was, before my 50th birthday, like everything's paid off, like just in the position to be able to get to do what I want with with who I want, when I want, where I want, all that stuff. But so people need to people don't spend enough time thinking about what they want and really crafting that vision and listening, right? We have to like get it. That's part of why quiet time and writing is so important. Like just being still and listening. And you're not going to get like, to me at least, I don't hear audibles like do this, but it's like it's just listening and acting, course correcting when you run into resistance, which we're all going to run into resistance. Like, well, what's that resistance for? What is it? How can I use this to become a better version of myself? Work through it, and allow that to course correct. I'm from the Northwest, right? So it rains all the time, unfortunately. Why we have a place in the sun. But anyhow, so I like raindrops on the window. Like when it doesn't, most of the time, unless it's raining really hard, it doesn't just go from the top to the bottom. It's like it's gathering over here with some more raindrops and you're learning some new knowledge, and it zags across the windshield and meets up with some new people that they're, that new person or thing is helping you learn a new skill, become a better version. And then you're going, and so all these lessons, right? These things that we're doing as we're going through life are all shaping us to our desired state, to our in time, right? And so it's just, unfortunately, a lot of people get stubborn, pig-headed, egotistical, whatever it is, and don't want to learn. And always being a learner. I don't care where you're at. Like, dude, I'm 26 years in to practice. I'm 50, almost 53, married again, 30 plus years to this, been with her since she was 14. She's 52. But I'm always learning. Like my relationship can always be better. My business, my communication skills can always be better. The things I do with my kids can always be improved. And so just knowing that like perfection's never going to happen, and being willing to get up every day and work on yourself to move to that better place. So,
yeah, it's again, a ton there. And that's super, super inspiring. And I think, really twofold question. I think maybe in today's day and age, maybe it's the people I listen to or some of the people I follow. I think if someone were to hear, oh crap, especially chiropractors today, oh crap, I got to do this for 23 years before I'm, in a position where I get to and not have to step out. What were some of those things that you were doing early on? Like when you think back to 26 years ago, you opened the bridge for the first time in that August. What were some of those things that you were doing? But then also, second part to that question, after 26 years being in practice, what were some of those things you should have been doing earlier on?
Yeah. So, man, a hustle, right, in the beginning. And I think that's a lost, and maybe some of it's social media, but I think you need to, and I'm coaching a doctor right now that's he's getting ready to open a second clinic, but I literally, so I set up a screening. We had our local fair the week of my, that the fair started like on a Friday, I opened that next Monday. I was there screening all weekend. It was a 10-day event where I screened. I limited my hours in the practice. I went door to door in the neighborhood around my office. Hey, Dr. Paul, new chiropractor around the corner. I'm doing a health survey. Do you have a couple minutes to answer 3 questions? Like I literally, and then I, used it as an opportunity to capture data, and basically just to intro myself. So man, just and letting who you are. So the other thing I think that today's chiropractors, some are afraid to communicate to the masses who they are and what they do. So like everywhere I went, like people knew I was a chiropractor. Oh, hey, Dr. Paul. Hey, Dr. Paul. Like get in your rhythm, like go to the same coffee shop, go to the same grocery store, the same bank, your kids' schools, like people, like you start like just get known in the community just from your rhythms of like, but you have to, again, own who you are. Like today, I think there's a lot of apprehension in practicing chiropractor, especially younger ones are just getting out, like they're almost fearful of like saying that I'm a chiropractor, right? Just based on and so and working through that, like whatever's causing that weakness, that's an obstacle in your life. That's resistance that you need to work through. If you got to study the research and own it, then friggin' study it and own it so that you can communicate confidently, because that's going to trickle over in your practice. If you can't even share firmly with conviction of who you are and what you do, like I mean, we're in the sales business, right? You're selling somebody on a better life, on better healthcare, on a better version of themselves. If you don't own it yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to communicate it in your practice. And so, so those are some of the things I would, early on that I did, and surround yourself as much as you can, especially early. Well, I shouldn't say especially early, your entire career. Like the more that you're around people, getting to events that are like-minded, it just strengthens you. We are in a profession that's a lot of times we'll go lone wolf, like docs, like just want to hide on their island, not communicate to anybody else. Are really great. I like to say the chiropractors are great at winning the war inside their office, but you get outside the office, like I was just explaining, they're super weak. I use the Gideon story, right? Gideon was great. He was fearful. He was threshing wheat, right, in the wine press instead of being out in the fields in the open and communicating and being who he's called to be. And so I think chiropractors, a lot of the same. Like we hide in that wine press in our office, right? We got our cloak on in there. We're strong, and then we get outside that and we get weak. And so surrounding yourself with docs that are doing and moving in the same direction, just because that iron sharpens iron. Like even if it just gives you a little boost of confidence, because you're gonna get resistance, you're gonna get pushback, you're gonna get told you're not a real doctor, and what do you know, and all that nonsense that we get. Some of it's changing. I'm, again, 26 years ago, it was worse than it is now in some senses. But it's worse today in some senses as well. But just forging that confidence in who you are. So I would say back then, those are things, man. Just learn to, carry your spine around so it draws questions. Like, what do you do? What do you do in that spine? Oh, I'm a chiropractor. Here's what we look for. One of my mentors had me do that early in my practice, Rob Schiffman. Carry your spine around everywhere you go, right? Yeah. I mean, and dude, if you want masses of new patients and want people to know who you are, like what better way to carry your spine around? People are, what are you doing? Oh, I'm a chiropractor. I'm just out here educating people. And then things today that I maybe didn't do, or 26 years in that I didn't do that I should have done. Work early in my career is, and this is something that came, as I matured, is learning communication skills with your team or your employees. Like it's you can't do anything that you want to do, especially if you want to scale, without other people and without learning to be able to be a good communicator with them, to encourage them, support them, and help them understand the vision, the purpose, and why. And with me, I'm pretty intense dude, and so I had to learn to communicate without that intensity, and bring them into the fold of like, no, man, we want to reach as many spines and nervous systems as possible, and that's why I'm so passionate about getting everybody in here that we can. And so I think, and that's something that everybody goes through. I don't think we're naturally. Not very many of us are great employee team, whatever you want to call it, communicators in the beginning, especially as you expand. We ended up, when we exited, I had 32 employees or 33 employees or something like that, mostly women. And so learning that dynamic of, when do I bring something up, and communicating. Everything I learned later in my career is just communicating clear expectations of your team.
Yep.
If you're communicating that and you've outlaid it and you're transparent and authentic with what you want them to do and need them to do to execute, then there's no question. Like if something doesn't happen, like, listen, we talked about this, it's an easy conversation. But if you're not communicating, what do they say that unspoken expectations lead to future resentments. And so if you're not communicating up front what you want, and this is like in your marriage too, right? Or any relationship, like if you're not communicating up front your expectations, that's setting up, future resentments and future failures and frustration and pain points. And so just learning to communicate up front as much as possible.
That's gold. That's gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of like mental fitness stuff, but you're super big into physical fitness. We see you be getting it on the Instagram and stuff. You really go hard.
Less than 10% body fat now too.
Yeah, that's right.
Beef. 5 couple weeks ago, yeah. Not bad for you.
Yeah.
You too. Sorry.
So Zach and I are both getting wedding bod ready, but both of us have actually been like pretty into fitness and like all kind of different things. Like we both had a stint in running for a while. Like I had a good stint in CrossFit. Zach was a big power lifter guy. But speak a little bit about like what has physical fitness done for you in your mindset in terms of like building your confidence, and why do you think it's important for people? Because I think, sorry.
No, go ahead, brother. Do you think what? Go ahead. No,
I was just saying, I see a lot of ads like for chiropractors, and everybody's got like the pudge and the polo, right? And it's like, man, that's what I don't want to look like.
So, amen. And that's part of my mission right now with the docs I'm working with is to get, it's unfortunate we to the point of physical fitness in a sec, but to that point, like we're great at communicating, but not leading ourselves to your right there. Like it's like, are you somebody that patient should look up to? Are you somebody that patient aspires to be like? Are you doing, what's required to be as healthy as possible yourself? Yeah. So anyhow, so that's a whole nother side we go down, but I'm a fan. Again, I've been an athlete my entire life, but I found through trial and error, meaning when I'm on and when I'm not on, like my life is better when I'm physically on. And I've, again, through experience found that my physical discipline or physical disciplines build all other disciplines. When I'm on physically, I'm sharper, stronger mentally. My faith is stronger because I'm taking care of myself. My relationship's better because I'm again fulfilling one of my non-negotiables. When I'm as healthy and functional as possible, I can be that husband, I can be that dad that I'm supposed to be. I'm a better steward physically, I'm be a better steward with my finances, and I think that if those that are off have the dad bod or the polo pudge or whatever you call it,
that's great.
Use that, right? Polo pudge. I'm going to use that, man. Too many chiropractors got polo pudge. Let's go. I'm seriously going to steal that. Thank you, Spencer. I'm going to use that.
Hey, it's just what it is.
But it's showing. It's showing lack of discipline. And so if you can't take care of yourself physically, who's to say that let's look at your finances. Are you a good steward of your finances? Are you really being a good husband, a good dad? Like all the other stuff I think is a trickle down of us physically, disciplining ourselves on the regular. And that's for everybody, right? Like me, hardcore. Like if I'm not getting in my workout intensity multiple times a week, I can't be me, but some people want to be 4 days, some people want to be 5 days, but it's just building that discipline that physical discipline in your routine.
And that's something I've been experiencing anecdotally, not to, focus on you.
No,
this entire time, but anecdotally, like Spencer mentioned, I was a power lifter. I was an offensive lineman. So I was pushing 280, 285 come 2020. And then I lost quite a bit of weight, but I always maintained like that 240. And then it wasn't until I got on an in-body scan, found out my body fat percentage, where I was like, that ain't good. I was still working out consistently, but then I started looking at what was I putting in my body? Was I making it in the temple? One of my favorite scripture in the Bible is Ephesians 2:22. Yeah, is your body's a temple for the Holy Spirit. But with that said, since doing 75 hard, you got to take that progress picture each and every day. And that first one, when I took it, I was like, man, you're a tomato. Like you're just swollen, so much inflammation. And now looking back, I'm like, it's one of the things I look forward to, where it's like, oh, I get to see my progress. And I've been doing the same with my finances as well, is becoming a better steward, no longer living paycheck to paycheck. And like, oh wow, look at the goodness that comes with all of this, because I've been implementing physical fitness and nutrition first and foremost, and that has trickled down into the rest of my life. So it's been really cool to see that anecdotally. I knew it this whole time, right, as a chiropractor, and it wasn't until I actually started implementing practice what I preach, that, saw the results of that.
Yeah. And we go through seasons too. Like it's, no.
I think like a big thing, like especially since we're chiropractors, and especially I feel like in like the chiropractor, like when you're like in the principled chiropractic world, you think that like, oh, well, exercise is dumb because like just get adjusted. But like just getting adjusted doesn't make you lean. Just getting adjusted doesn't make you squat 300 pounds or whatever. Like it doesn't make you more fit. It gives you the capability to be more fit. But really, I think it's a disgrace if you're saying like, oh, I get adjusted all the time and I'm regular with my adjustments, but then you don't use the potential that you've created for your own body. People tell me that all the time. They're like, oh, my chiropractor says I shouldn't go work out after I get adjusted. And I'm like, why? You're at 100%. This is the time to go get.
That's when you should go play. Right? You're going to jump higher, run faster, be stronger.
Yeah. So like, what are some of the, because like you said, like you're a chiropractor and like you quote BJ and you do all those things and you like really hold high like the chiropractic torch. But what are some of the ways that you move your body? Like what are your modalities of choice? Like how do you, like what kind of exercise program are you on? What do you do with your diet?
Yeah. So man, again, like seasons, like I went through a season of, cause I was the same way, man. I was, I was a linebacker, that's what I got my scholarship as. And then ACL slower, I left WSU as a lineman.
So we all played offensive line. Nice.
Right. I was 285, right. When I left Pullman, did a bodybuilding show, like that first year of chiropractic college to drop the weight. I got to get rid of it because I showed up with abs and left friggin', 285 with 0 abs.
You knew every spot in the dining.
I did, right? I was in the last one before the bench. Yeah. That's what they say. Where did I go in that? Anyhow, so through seasons. So I did in Chiro school, did a bodybuilding show, and then I got out of Chiro school, and I got into running. So I did some marathons, and I did some. Never did a full triathlon, but did some sprints and Olympic. And then I found CrossFit like 20. Oh man, it's been a long time. It just was getting popular, like before 2010, I think. Anyhow, so then I did CrossFit for at least a decade. And then 2015, I had a complete quad rupture competing in the games, and 15.1 ruptured my quad doing a max squat clean. That was a bad day. But again, the body's brilliant and healed post surgery. But then 2021 again, because I'm competitive, I kept breaking myself at CrossFit. I was still doing it, going down, and we have a highly competitive. The gym I was going to is highly competitive. Like Justin Medeiros, the games athlete, 1-2 year. He trains there. He's Adam's. My old coach is his coach, Adam Knifer. And so that like there's a lot of quote unquote masters that were super competitive. So I was always trying to hang, and something would always break. My elbows are always inflamed. Like just anyhow. So I started training at home and doing more traditional lifting, combined with a couple days of high intensity CrossFit-esque stuff. And now I'm still doing that, but I'll add in, I'll run, 4-ish miles, 2-3 days a week, depending on the week. So
I think I've seen too, even on your social, every once in a while you go to Orange Theory with the wife, and
yeah.
So you're hitting everything. Nice.
So and then talk about your nutrition. What has that been like for you?
Yeah. So I've gone, old school. Now I'm doing more old school bodybuilding-esque, managing, keeping the fat down to about 20%, balancing out the carbs and the proteins. But I did keto for a long time. So I'm always, and I think that's true. I think our body, as you guys know, right? Our body is going to adapt. And so I think keeping it variable, but I'm feeling the best and leaning out the most, kind of going old school, balanced carbs, proteins, and then keeping the fats to a minimum.
I think that's definitely, having been keto now for 58 days, it's what I found to be the best for me. And that's something I often, and I'm sure you got it, Spencer, you probably get it all the time, is like, well, what diet should I be doing? And other than veganism, I'm like, whatever one you feel the best on, you see results with, and that you can do consistently. And that sometimes they hate that answer because they're like, well, just tell me what to do.
We do, yeah.
But like, I can't tell you keto, and then you go try keto and you have keto flu for a full month, and you're like, well, this doesn't seem very sustainable. So I think being the human guinea pig is essential as chiropractors, because we got to give that advice, and we got to know, okay, one time a strength training conditioning coach told me, and I've lived with it the rest of my life, is, I'm never going to prescribe an exercise to someone if I haven't done it a few times myself. And I feel very much the same way in my office. Like, unless I've done it, whether it's a referral to a massage therapist or a diet or an exercise, I'm not going to recommend it to you. And so that's been a big thing.
I wish more chiropractic coaches would practice that.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where I was going with
Sorry,
that, is because as time moves on, Zach and I, we, wrapped up our first year. We're about we're kind of Q1 of our second year. You kind of go through these seasons of change and evolution where you're like, oh, I think I'm going to do this, or this is kind of that, right? And it's the same way with your fitness. It's the same way with your nutrition. Like, I kind of went the same path. Like, I was going through CrossFit, feeling like I was like really burnt out. And I loved it for that season, but I was like, there's no way I can like max out in this WOD and then show up as my full self in the office and stuff. So now I do more like traditional lifting with like some mixed CrossFit intensity stuff, and then I like to run. Very slowly, but I still like to run.
Right.
But anyway, how do you feel like that inner reflection with yourself translates into practice and the coaching and stuff that you do? Like, how do you see that reflect in your coaching clients in terms of their evolution and, helping people find their sweet spot?
Yeah. That's really what all coaching really is, right? Is helping them to rediscover themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think back to what we started with that morning routine. Like, that's really when that self-discovery happens. If we're not making the time for us, going those non-negotiables that we spoke about, like, you're never gonna have the opportunity to reflect and see and analyze. And if we're not, what I like to call after action reviews, AARPs, like, if I'm not looking back at my after my actions, after my my performance, saying, okay, well, that went well, but that didn't go well. How could I do that different? And course correcting, we're just going to end up in the same place, doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result. And so, and I think that self-reflecting and discovery happens with that morning routine. And that's really the job of a coach. But unfortunately, there's a lot of coaches, to the point to the pudgy polo. It's really no different. Like, and again, it's me. You can read a book and teach, right? Because that's what our professors in college do. But having read the book, done it, been there, doing it, is way different than having just read the book and trying to teach somebody else to do what you've read. And so I think there's dozens of great coaches, but there's also a lot of coaches that just it's the next thing for people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they think because they've had an average practice, they can coach, or read a book, they can coach. So,
yeah. In coaching people, I'm sure you do like some startup stuff. Mm-hmm. What do you notice has the higher impact in your clients? Them focusing on their physical fitness at the beginning, or focusing on their business?
No, we start everything with focusing on them. That your business is a reflection of you. So all my unstoppable stuff starts with morning routine, morning disciplines, and that trickles over in the business. Now, again, like, if there's a crisis in the practice, you got to address it. But we start with the person first, and you have to. Like, the business is the man, and if the man's not showing up for himself, he's not going to show up in the business.
Yeah, where it goes back to that. Something you hear often is like, you are the self-limiting component, right? You're the lacking.
You're the block.
Yeah. And so overcoming yourself, which is not always the easiest thing, especially early on with.
Yeah. And I think early in your career, that's exactly it. Now, sometimes, there is systems or process that puts a capacity on a business. And so refining those systems and process, and that's where, also where a coach is great, because you can have another set of eyes like, hey man, you're not seeing this. And that's what's holding you back. I just had a conversation with a buddy of mine that I'm coaching that's 27 or 28 years into practice. We've known each other our entire career. He started coaching again, not because he wanted to grow a bunch, but just have the community and commitment and camaraderie with, that comes with being part of a group. But he's like, hey, I want to serve a couple more people on Fridays. I'm like, well, tell me about your Friday. He's like, well, I'm seeing, whatever, 50 something. I wouldn't mind bumping that to 60 something. I'm like, well, tell me what you're doing. And he'd gotten in a habit of, people love him, right? He's been doing it a long time. So they all come in and they want to hug him before they get, I'm like, are people lying down, face down, getting out of gravity so you could check them? He's like, no, they all want to come in and hug me. I'm like, well, which is great, but that's just slowing the process down. And he goes, and then we just kind of kept going through questions. And it's like, there's some stuff that he was doing that he wasn't necessarily getting paid for, that he was doing just to serve. I'm like, bro, like, moving forward, all those people that's not a service that you can, like, you need stopped doing a few of those things and added 10 more people to his day, hit his goal, the next week. And so just, yeah.
Where's some of the resources that you like to point people toward first? Like, do you have like a go-to book that you start people with, or?
Man, no, not necessarily. Like it's, actually, I want to hear one of my favorite books. This isn't a go-to. I tell people to read the U Squared. I don't know if you guys have read that, but you should read that. Price Pritchard, and it's really skinny on that. Is if you're unwilling to do radically different things, you're going to continue to get the same result. So until you're ready to pivot and take radically different action, you're just going to keep getting the same result over and over again in life.
Yeah, I think it's just so it's kind of dumbfounding how you think like, oh, in my business to grow, I have to grow my business. Like if I want to grow my business, then I have to work on my business. But Zach and I, we started 75 Hard together, and we've been doing this kind of together. And so I've been focusing a lot on me because you have to do those things, reading what I want to read, exercising, moving my body, taking care of myself. And this month we've doubled the revenue that we were doing 3 months ago.
Doing
And
nothing different,
but only taking care of myself more. And so
high fives, dude.
Yeah, dude, right.
Yeah.
So I think it's just like so incredibly important, like, because like you said, like as your mindset develops, then you start to see things differently and all those things. What are some of the limiting beliefs or some of the big mental roadblocks that you see a lot of your clients come up with?
Man, so just service capacity stuff, I think is the biggest thing and to your exact point, like I just did a training on mastering internal referrals. Docs want internal referrals, which is right. We all should want them. And it's the easiest practice growth, the highest staying, paying, referring members. But back to them, they're not leading themselves. So they're not showing up at 100%, right? They're not on point. They're not on mission. They're on purpose, again, because they didn't do their discipline. Like you just said, right? Those things are trickling over to you showing up and being on, which is naturally growing your business. And so that my whole opening statement for mastering internal referrals is you being on and being connected to your purpose, your mission, and your why you became a chiropractor, and making sure that is expressed to your team and expressed to your practice members. And it's naturally going to stimulate internal referrals. We would get, when I was at my busiest, like people just walk into the office, like, I don't know, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be here. Right. Well, we know it's a God, right? Like just set energy out. So just, yeah, it's so huge. Like you've noticed, Spencer. So that's awesome.
Talking mental blocks is awesome. And then also physical blocks in the practice, right? You mentioned, the hugs, and I'm sure some people might be listening and be like, well, how am I going to build internal referrals if I'm also not making patients that are walking in feel loved or that type of thing? So how do you find that balance and really allow people to feel seen and feel heard, but also not give in to, people pleasing, if you will?
Excessive chatter. Yeah. Like feeling like that's, again, it starts with that initial phone call, that initial day one, and just building rapport, being authentic and real with people. You don't have to spend extra time. I think that's a huge misconception in our profession. Like, well, time equals, a better service. Not true.
Attention does.
What's that?
I said, yeah, but attention is what creates value, right?
Yeah.
And attention to detail.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And so just building that rapport with them, being straightforward, speaking your truth, and knowing, right, that not every patient is going to want what you have, and being okay with them going to the doc down the street because they just didn't fit in your tribe, and that's hard early in practice. Like, we're getting that need, like I got to get take care of everybody because we're wanting to grow. But just knowing like they're not aligned for your practice, your business, for you. It's not part of your tribe, and just being okay with, like, because when you release one, you're going to receive one. Just being okay with that.
What would your advice be? Switching gears a little bit here, but as Spencer just brought on Caitlin, who is his co-owner, but also his fiance, as well as the first other doc in the office. What would be some advice you would highly recommend for docs that are looking to onboard associate or two associates, or 32, 33 team members? What would be some advice there?
Man, so for longevity with them is creating, your culture creates your atmosphere. So creating the culture that you want. And again, that starts with, you got to think about it first, right? So you can't just show up and say, oh, here's the culture I want. Like, you got, like, what is the set? What what are our walls saying? What is the music saying? How am I communicating? What are the colors? Like literally every detail of the practice, creating that culture, which is going to create the atmosphere, which will help people stay. And so with bringing on new docs, again, I had lots of docs that worked with me / for me, being transparent and authentic about roles and responsibilities. A lot of times I think, when quote unquote associateships or whatnot go sour, it's because the primary doctor, the owner, whatever you want to say, clinic director, wasn't authentic and transparent about exactly what that doc's role would be. And a lot of times the young new doc sees the rock star doc, like, oh, he's driving this car, he works this many days a week, he's doing these things, I'm going to immediately be there. Like, and really, right, that you guys get it. But like, but again, it's like just being authentic and transparent. Like, here's the rules. You're going to work these hours. You're going to do these things, and showing them like there is progression. Like if you hit these benchmarks, we're going to advance to doing these things. You're going to get more responsibilities as you grow to here, more responsibility. I had like a tier that I showed my docs. So I think just creating the vision first, and then being transparent and authentic about roles and expectations of them.
And was that setting benchmarks like, hey, at 3 months, I expect you to be here? Not necessarily expect, but this is where you should be.
That's what we're striving for. Yeah.
Yeah. And was that laid out through, were you doing 2-year contracts or?
Well, I only did year contract or agreements. Probably should have done 2 or more, but we train, part of it comes from the training process. We met and trained regularly. Because like that's the leader's job is to train them,
just to not leave any assumptions.
Yeah.
What was training regularly at the Bridge Chiropractic?
Weekly.
Okay. Yeah.
And from everything again, docs skip the small stuff. Like, how is the phone answered? Like, is your team picking up the phone with the phone with a smile and having that interview? Because that's being transferred to that patient on the other line, and like, hello, so we had scripts. So I made my team literally would go like pick up the phone and answer it. Like, this is Bridge Chiropractic, how can I serve you? Or, whatever. Like, I made sure they were smiling. So all the details of practice was done in training, from initial phone call to report of findings to exam, consultation, re-x-ray, like all the stuff. So
which then goes again back to physically training your body and mentally training your body and mind each and every day, and how important that is. So really cool.
And my docs that excelled more than the others were the ones that built the physical discipline into their lives, right? That goes over everything. So
yeah, we can get like, there's so many things like to really like dive into, and like the small like nitty gritty things. And I mean, that's where your coaching program comes into, which like Zach and I say it again and again and again and again and again. If you don't have a coach and you don't follow somebody's program, don't recreate the wheel. Just find the wheels that you want to put on your car. And so get you a coach. If you like Dr. Paul, get on his program. Like, we're super excited to dive into your stuff and like in the future, and we love your content. But we can have all of these visions, we can have all of these systems, we can have all of these things. And as like servants of Christ, like Zach and I are both believers, and we both like are saying, this is the biggest thing. We all know God really has it in his hands, right?
Yep.
As the visionary, as the founder of your business, how do you balance being, how do you balance the surrender to God and the diligence and stewardship of your business without feeling like you're holding onto the reins so tight and you're not like letting go of everything at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, it's a delicate dance, obviously. But we had, went through seasons where I had worship music going the entire time in my clinic. And I think, he placed all of whatever your profession is, if he placed you in that place, and we're talking specifically chiropractic and chiropractors, right? I think it's your responsibility to him to show up the best version of yourself so that people can see him through you, back to what I opened up with. And that comes with all the things that we've talked about this morning. And so if you're not being like, he placed you in the profession, he placed you where you're at in your business, whether you own it or working for somebody, he's an extension of you to your community, to those that you work with on the regular. And so showing up and being that person is naturally gonna, it sets the direction the way it needs to be set. But he also calls you, like, we're supposed to be good with our finances, we're supposed to be good with our business. And so those are all things that are our responsibilities. And again, back to stewardship, and I call it our covenants, right? So I operate on my foundational 5: your faith, your fitness, your finance, family, and fun. So those are like the 5 covenants in my program. And so really each day mastering, or not, I shouldn't say mastering, because we're never going to master, but like each day becoming better at each one of those and fulfilling that covenant, and which means responsibility or agreement, right, is going to help you show up how you're supposed to. So
diving into that, one of those 5 with family, one thing that was really inspiring, and I made sure to show my fiance Morgan, not because of like we should do this, but it was really cool to see. You posted a couple weeks ago, you had a goal. I think it was, coaching clients or some type of goal, but then your wife had a sticky note on her laptop of like, this is Paul's goal.
yeah.
What was it like bringing her along and having her part of your journey, and what does that mean?
It's meant everything. Like it's the best thing since sliced bread, right? So it's we've been together so long, we're really one. But I think congruence and continuity and vision, it helps expedite everything moving forward. And so I would encourage, no matter who's listening, that you make time to connect regularly with your significant other, and talk about that vision, talk about your week, talk about where you're going, what you're doing, what you want. Because when there's alignment and agreement, like everything happens so much easier. And there's going to be times, right? Like there's going to be times that you're going to have to do some extra work. You have to get up early, leave early, stay late, whatever. And when there's that agreement, like you guys are aligned in the vision and the purpose, it's okay. But when there's not, that's when resentment starts to happen. And then that's where, resentment leads to friction and then breakdown in communication and all this stuff. And so it's been one of the cornerstones, to my success is her supporting me, and literally everything we've done, between the offices, the commercial property, coffee shop now, like all this stuff that we, the coaching, traveling and speaking, which takes time away from her now. Now that the kids are grown, she comes with me a lot, which is awesome. But yeah.
When did she stop? Maybe she never did, but I know I'll come home and tell Morgan, I'm like, hey, I thought of this idea that would be good, and she's kind of like, when are we gonna have time? Is that still happening? Is she still rolling her eyes? Yeah.
That won't ever stop. It happens now. I'm like, oh, let's do another coffee shop. Let's do this. She's like, what are you doing? And that's just the entrepreneur. But I would tell you guys, the other thing I see with docs is, as an entrepreneur, especially, in Chiro's, I think it might be a little bit worse, but like we want to like start something new before the first thing is really mastered.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage anybody listening, or yourself specifically, because we're talking, make sure that your main thing is the main thing. Make sure that primary business, the first one you started, is super solid. It's cash flowing, it's moving, it's doing what it needs to do before you extend yourself into something else. Because we all have until you set the infrastructure and have systems and process, we all have limited bandwidth, right? 24 hours a day, we can only focus on so many things. And I see docs all the time, like, oh, I'm going to open a second office, because they see, for one, they're doing it for one reason. They think it's a financial opportunity instead of like a service opportunity. And so then they don't have the first one in place, and then that one struggles, and the second one struggles, and then both of them struggle, and they, get in hardship. And so really making sure the main thing's the main thing, and it is solid before you extend yourself into anything else.
I know, again, anecdotally, just happened a couple weeks ago. I was like, you know what? I think there's a really big market in affiliate marketing. Have somewhat of a following on social media, post a couple of times, and I started like fixating more on that business. And I know exactly when, because that's when things slowed down just a bit in the chiropractic office, which is not at a stable. It's growing, but it's not where I want it to be. And I was like, it wasn't until a couple days ago where I was like, oh crap, like my vision and focus has shifted away from the practice, and it's mainly all on me again.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy, the power of our mind. Like there was a time in my career, this is about, man, eight years into practice, serving a high amount of people. And I got served a notice from a patient that was going to potentially sue me. It didn't happen, but anyhow, that stress literally, like my practice dropped 50% the next week, just because, nothing changed other than my headspace, stressing and worrying about something that was out of my control and it was irrelevant anyhow. But literally that mental shift, like destroyed the practice, like 50%. Overnight, just because of my worry and stress. And so it's powerful, like our mind. So back to that point, like you can't, like you have to make sure that the first thing's solid before you do anything else, because then it just compromise. I'm working with Doc right now. Like he had one practice, it was going okay, wasn't great. Again, saying, oh, I'm going to open one in another community a few miles away. So he did that, put that doctor in there, didn't have systems in his first one, didn't have systems in the second one. The doc bailed on him on the, out of the second office, quit. So then he's going back and forth, cut back to part-time at one. So he's doing part-time at both. And then he got, unfortunately got injured. He got a severe infection. He hasn't been able to practice for 6 months. So he hasn't been in his clinics so now he's finding, like, it's just, so you got to make sure that you got systems and process in place to support what you want. Back to when I mentioned I ruptured my quad, I had been asking, like, God, I want to do more clinics. I want to do more clinics. I want to do more clinics. I want to expand. I want to expand. But I was a little bit of a control freak, right? Like, I'm like, oh, it's got to be me. And how am I going to do it? If it's not me, it's not going to be the same experience, the same adjustment, the same blah, blah, blah. And I had a good system, right? But I still was wanting more, but I wouldn't let go. And, lo and behold, rupture my quad. All right, dummy, like, you've been asking for this and you're not letting go. So now I'm going to force you to have to let go. And the practice, I had 2 at the time, didn't miss a beat. Like, we were, boom. Okay. All right. Clarity. So this system works, Paul. And so then we did 3, 4, and 5 within, a few months of themselves, expanded.
Nice.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience. I was trying to force my will upon everything and try 9. Spencer knows all too well. Tore my pec wrestling a buddy, just shattered it right off the bone, and that was a quick and really hard lesson of, okay, it's not my will to be done. It's
right.
Yeah.
Amen. Wow, that's cool.
That's great, Dr. Paul. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you have. Absolutely. As we wrap up, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at on social media and those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think the quickest and easiest is my Instagram at see Dr. Paul Reed official. Yeah, Facebook just Paul Reed, but yeah, so I think Instagram's probably where I'm posting the most, and where I'm most active. So yeah, Instagram at Paul Reed official.
Nice.
And for those of us stuck in the South, when is the next Chiro Fest, and when should we?
September 13, 14. Yeah, September 13, 14. I keep it weekend before, weekend after anniversary weekend, September 18th. And so this year it fell before. So yeah, so September 13, 14.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So then final question is, this is the What Now podcast. So what's next for Dr. Paul Reed?
Man, what next is just continue to serve chiros and serve men towards their next best. Expanding my reach. I obviously have some specific goals in the amount that I want to reach, but again, trying not link to that, just knowing that each one I'm working with is showing up better and having a better relationship with God, their family, their wife, being a better business person. So yeah, that's next.
That's awesome. Great. Zach, you have anything else for the good of the order?
No. Thank you again so much, Dr. Paul. It's been
You're welcome, guys. Thank you.
It's been awesome. I know I'm inspired, and I'm sure those listening are inspired as well. So
awesome.
Thanks again.
Appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the What Now podcast with Dr. Paul Reed. See you guys next time. Peace. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the What Now podcast. If you took something valuable away, feel free to share it with a friend, post it on your socials, or give us a 5-star review. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.